After waking from a chilling nightmare, therapist Rose receives an urgent call about Carl, a distressed patient, repeatedly muttering that he's going to die. She calms his fears, assuring him of his safety, before entrusting him to a nurse's care. She gets another call about a patient named Laura, who is deeply traumatized after witnessing her professor bludgeon himself to death with a hammer. She enters the consulting room and spots Laura huddled in the corner. With a warm smile, Rose offers her a seat and reassures her that there's nothing to fear. Once Laura is seated, Rose begins gently asking her a few questions, hoping to ease her troubled mind. Laura confides in Rose, describing how she often sees a sinister entity taking the form of people with unnaturally twisted smiles, bringing misfortune wherever it goes. Rose tries to calm her, suggesting it might be a hallucination, but Laura vehemently insists she isn't crazy. With fear in her eyes, she tells Rose that the demon has warned her that she will die today. Rose asks Laura if she can see the demon at that moment. Suddenly, Laura's eyes fill with terror. She leaps back, screaming desperately, trying to fend off an invisible entity. Panicking, Rose tries to call for help, but when she turns back, she's stunned to see Laura smiling eerily, clutching an object in her hand. With a terrifying smile plastered on her face, Laura starts tearing her skin from her face down to her neck with the object, while Rose watches in sheer horror. After the incident, Rose is taken to the station to give her statement about Laura's tragic suicide. The policemen listen, their disbelief clear on their faces. Exhausted, Rose returns home, freshens up, and downs a glass of whiskey to steady her nerves. Suddenly, a chilling reflection catches her eye, a figure resembling her mother smiling ominously. Startled, she hears a voice, causing the glass to slip from her grasp and shatters. But it's her fiancé, Trevor. Shaken, Rose recounts her harrowing experience at the hospital, and Trevor comforts her with a reassuring hug. Later that evening, Rose and Trevor attend a dinner party with Rose's sister Holly and her husband Greg. Amid the laughter and conversation, Holly extends an invitation to Rose for her son's upcoming birthday party. Rose politely declines, explaining that she has to work that day. Holly shifts the conversation, suggesting they sell their mother's house, but Rose firmly refuses, reminding Holly of their shared memories and saying they grew up there. Afterward, Rose feeds her cat at home. Rose starts her morning at the hospital with a strong cup of coffee and requests Laura's police report from the nurse. Joel, one of the cops who took her witness report and harbors secret feelings for her, approaches nervously. Apologizing for his odd behavior, he shakily admits he just wants to check on her. Rose, brushing off his concern, replies that she doesn't need checking up on and walks away. Back in her office, as she reads Laura's report, she receives a call from Holly. She picks up and heads to the window, only to freeze in fear when she sees a woman staring directly at her. As she's leaving the hospital, Rose passes by Carl's ward and notices him smiling awkwardly with a strange sense of calmness. She tries to get his attention, but he remains unfazed, staring forward with that eerie smile. Suddenly, he turns to her and starts yelling, "You're going to die." Panic-stricken, Rose shouts for help, but when the guards arrive to restrain him, they find Carl sleeping peacefully. Later, she's summoned to the senior's office, where a supervisor expresses concern that the stress of her job might be affecting her mentally and grants her a week off. Feeling disappointed with herself, Rose leaves the hospital, but later buys a gift for her nephew's birthday, relieved that she now has the opportunity to attend before heading home. Rose is enjoying a glass of wine at home when the security alarm suddenly blares, startling her. A security agent calls to inquire about the alarm and assists in searching the house, ultimately finding nothing and suggesting a technical malfunction might have triggered it. They assure her there's nothing to worry about. Trevor asks why she set the alarm, but she doesn't remember doing so. When she calls out to feed her cat, it's nowhere to be found, despite searching the whole house. Unable to sleep that night, Rose listens to Laura's audio report when a figure suddenly appears, terrifying her. The commotion wakes Trevor, who rushes to find a very frightened Rose clutching a knife. The next morning, Rose meets up with her childhood therapist Madeline and pours out her heart about the vivid hallucinations she's been experiencing since Laura's suicide. Madeline gently suggests that her mind might be fixated on the incident because it stirs up memories of her mother's suicide and advises Rose to find ways to distract herself from these anxieties. After her therapy session, Rose gets ready and heads to her nephew's birthday party. Upon arrival, Holly is overjoyed and pleasantly surprised to see her sister. She excitedly introduces Rose to her friends before they join Jackson in celebrating his birthday. As Jackson eagerly unwraps his presents, he reaches Rose's gift, his face lighting up with joy. But his excitement turns to horror when he pulls out a dead cat, shocking everyone around. Rose gasps in disbelief at her cat's lifeless body and rushes to embrace it. Desperately, she tries to explain that she has no idea how her cat ended up in the box, but everyone continues to stare at her in stunned silence. The situation escalates when Rose suddenly spots a woman smiling eerily at her, causing her to scream in terror. Everyone is bewildered as they can't see what she sees. In her panic, Rose stumbles and crashes into a glass table, injuring herself. She's rushed to the hospital where she works, and the senior doctor expresses deep concern for her mental health, advising her to consult a therapist. Later, she confides in Trevor, who can't help but find her recent behavior unusually bizarre. Rose desperately insists that she's not losing her mind and reveals that an evil entity is haunting her. Trevor, unable to grasp the gravity of her plight, walks away, leaving her pleas unheard. Later that night, she dives deep into the heartbreaking case of Laura's professor, who tragically ended his life with a hammer in hopes of finding answers. The following morning, she meets his widow, posing as a reporter, driven to uncover the truth behind his actions. The wife reveals to Rose that her husband exhibited bizarre behavior before his death, often waking up in the middle of the night, screaming in terror. Furthermore, she shows to Rose the eerie drawings he made of the things he saw, explaining that he had been haunted by these visions ever since witnessing a woman take her own life. The woman soon realizes Rose isn't a reporter when Rose confides that she's experiencing the same horrors her husband did. Outraged and frightened, she swiftly kicks Rose out. Afterward, Rose meets up with Joel and asks for his help in digging up any recent police reports involving the professor who took his own life. Joel scours the internet and uncovers that the professor had witnessed a woman commit suicide in the hotel where he was staying. Rose requests Joel to search again, this time for information on the woman who committed suicide. After a moment of hesitation, Joel proceeds and reveals to Rose that the woman had also witnessed a man killing himself. They both watch the security footage, stunned as they observe the man grinning eerily just before taking his own life. Rose heads to meet Trevor, only to find him there with her therapist. She argues, insisting she doesn't need therapy, and storms out to see Holly instead. Desperately, she tells Holly that an evil entity is behind everything happening to her, but no one else can see it. Holly, alarmed, says Rose sounds just like their mother before she died. Their argument heats up, and Holly finally tells Rose she can't have her around anymore because she's scaring her son. Rose later gets a call from Joel, who shares his shocking discoveries. He tells her he's uncovered 20 similar cases, including 19 suicides, all connected to Laura's situation. He reveals that a man named Robert didn't take his own life, but brutally murdered a woman, and the witness to that crime ended his own life a week later. Joel also informs her that none of the victims lasted more than a week, except for Robert, who is now in police custody. They meet up with Robert, and Rose explains that one of her patients is suffering from the same terrifying experiences he had. She pleads for any possible way to help. Robert reveals, with a grim expression, that her patient can only be saved by committing a brutal murder in front of a witness, thus transferring the curse. When Rose accidentally admits she's the one cursed, Robert panics, fearing she could pass it back to him. He screams in horror, causing the guards to restrain him and usher Rose out of the building. Stunned by what she's learned, Rose gathers the photos of the victims' suicides, contemplating whether she should go to the extreme lengths of killing someone to break free from her fate. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and it's Madeline. She apologizes for her unexpected visit the previous day, but Rose, fearing she might end up cursed too, asks her to leave immediately. With a knife in her car, Rose heads to the hospital, planning to kill Carl, but the thought of committing such a horror makes her turn back. Instead, she drives to her childhood home where her mother died, ready to confront her deepest fears. Joel tries to contact her, but she doesn't reveal her location, explaining that she wants to isolate herself to prevent the curse from spreading to anyone else. At the house, she is flooded with flashbacks of her childhood memories. As night falls, she lights a lamp to chase away the darkness. Walking slowly, she sits down, bracing herself for the demon's arrival. However, the silence is broken by the chilling sound of a woman crying from a nearby room. Rose opens the door and finds the demon taking the form of her mother. It tries to get into her head by playing on her emotions, but Rose stands firm, declaring that she knows it's not real. The demon grabs her, throws her to the ground, and starts choking her, taunting that she can't escape her mind. Rose fights back, breaking the demon's hand, then hurls the burning lamp at it, setting it ablaze. She leaves the house as it burns behind her and drives to Joel's house, feeling a sense of fulfillment. Rose apologizes to Joel for dragging him into her chaotic world. She asks to stay at his place for the night, but Joel smirks, saying he would stay with her forever, sending a chill of panic through her. She bolts out of the house, with him in pursuit, only to find herself mysteriously outside her old home. The real Joel arrives, but she dashes back into the house, locking the door behind her. She turns to see the demon advancing on her. Frustrated and desperate, she succumbs to the demon's power. Joel eventually breaks into the room to find Rose drenched in fuel, holding a matchbox and smiling eerily at him. Paralyzed by shock, he watches helplessly as she strikes a match and sets herself ablaze.